And so we decided to do a theatre project. We justified it with curricular outcomes. We engaged the English, drama, music, history, and guidance departments, and we said, we think there is content here for all of you. We got the community involved, and we got a selection of young people, volunteers, who agreed to give up a week of their school for us to go and work with them for a whole week. So off timetable, out of uniform, that was controversial. And they were responsible for catching up. So these were exam students, but they committed to doing it. Except one lad, who I'll tell you about in a minute. We said we only use words from the original archives, but we create a script. So we spent the first day just creating a script. I think this is us. Yeah, that's us down the bottom there, sitting around with those students, writing the script. And then this is us beginning to do some devising and blocking. So we devised the whole thing. We started on the Monday, and we did the script development, and then we presented the thing on Friday the following week after a week's work. And that's one of my specialisms that I do, instant theatre. So that's what I was doing at Auckland. We would script a stage in a week. So this is us working with these students who were fabulous to work with. So, just go back there. So that was it there. This is all the stuff they had to do. And this is them performing it. So this was performed in the school, public performance. So we had local councillors, we had the local MSP, who's a member of Scottish Parliament. We had several relatives of Elspeth and the Boyds who came along, which I'll show you in a minute. So this is that's the boy playing John with his eye injury, and this piece here with the cloth was the memorial service for the nurses who died, which I'll show you a clip of in a minute. This lad spoke to me after the first day that we were doing this, and he said, I didn't know this was drama. I thought that we were going to be just writing something, and I'm not really interested in drama. I don't want to perform. And I said that's fine. You know, we'd already said, after the first day, if you think this is not ready for me, tell us, and you can walk away. So I said, you can just walk away if you like. Oh well, I might just come along tomorrow, but I'm not going to take part. So he showed a facility for being able to look at a piece of devised work. So we would be in the room and we'd say, well, why don't we just try this out? So Elspeth comes in here, this, that, and the other, and he'd be off at the side. This typical Scottish kind of, and I could just see the little shake of the head, and he'd look away. And I said, "Oh, Luke, what do you think?" "Oh, well, no, she should come on from over there, and this cloth should be down here." And you think, he's got it. That's my job's done here. I walk away. So he ended up performing, and Scott and I both said to him, "You have a presence on stage that not many of these young people have got, but you also have this ability to look at a scene and strip out what's not needed." That's, again, my style of theatre is very minimalist. And he would just say, all we need on stage is the coat stand and that guy there. We don't need all this other stuff. And he was right every time. He spoke to us afterwards. He brought his dad along. And his dad looked very reluctant about this. But he got Scott and me to after the performance. He wanted us to tell his dad what we had told him about being this amazing performer. So we did, and I could see his dad just couldn't believe what he was hearing. So he's now at drama school in Glasgow, and I was really proud of him. You'll see him performing in a minute. So I've just got 2 short video clips for you of the actual performance. It was just a camcorder, so it's a bit shaky.
Flickers, wending their weary way up the hill. Such is my impression of that walk to the cemetery. Every heart is heavy with grief, and everyone is tired. We stand in the bright sunlight, row upon row of us, waiting for the arrival of the brave ones so soon to be laid to rest. The Colonel-in-Chief arrives, and many other officers marching up the path, followed by row upon row of patients in hospital blue. Some are lame and are aided by their comrades. Some have bandaged heads and arms, but all still insisted in coming to pay their last tribute to the sisters who had died for them. Then at last, the cars arrive. Our matron enters and the sad procession begins. Borne high on the shoulders of 4 colonels and covered with the Union Jack, the coffin of the first sister comes. The others follow, also carried by our own medical officers, and we walk slowly after, through the ranks of men who line the path, each standing at attention. The burial service is a soul-stirring one. There is something great and comforting about it, and I feel at that moment, death is a fine thing. And my heart is filled with envy for those who have died so bravely, whose fears and sorrows are now over. For us, the weary, return to work, and the cold hand of fear ever on our hearts. For us, the daily toll, forcing our bodies to act. For them, peace. When the last post is played, every officer approaches and salutes the open grave, and my heart is bound with pride as I stand up straight with tears smarting in my eyes.
She's typical west of Scotland. She talks at 100 miles an hour.
John Boyd, Randallstown, 15th of April, 1916. So sorry I've been so long in writing. I've not been in a mood for writing owing to news I heard 3 days ago that Alex Cooper was killed in action. You'll remember A. Cooper. He was my chum on guard at the gun from January till I was wounded. As you know, there are always 2 men on guard at the gun at any time, as it is necessary for 2 for firing the gun. The news has upset me a bit. When I went to France and was 2 months in my company, my chums on guard were A. Farquhar and W. Laidlaw, and they had been killed, and then I went back to M-Gun section in January, and my chum in the trenches was Alex Cooper. I've said for about 6 months that the Germans had killed my 2 chums, and I'd always a little consolation that A. Cooper left. But now, he's gone. I'm enclosing 3 letters, and I'd like you to keep them for me until I come home, as I wish to keep them in remembrances of them. They have nobly given up their lives for their country. I'm wondering who will be taken away from me next. I received your parcel in fine condition and enjoyed the cake first rate. I remain your affectionate son, John.
John Boyd, UVF Hospital, Belfast, 7th of October 1916. Dear Mother, just a line or two to let you know I'm in the pink of condition. I get extra'd last Monday the 2nd and was waiting until I received the results of the examination, and I think they've discovered what is the matter with my eye and head, and I think that in a week or 2 I will have my eye and head back to what it should be like after 18 months with my eye watering. I will be very glad to get it back to what it was before I was wounded. I'm liking the hospital life alright, and I'm quite content. Have you heard any more from Craig? I am your loving son, John.
The eye injury that John received as thing went off, shell went off, and he got shrapnel fragments in his face, and they took them all out, but his eye wouldn't stop watering. So he was transferred to hospitals all over England, and they couldn't figure this out. They said, "Oh, it'll clear, it'll be fine." He was eventually sent to Belfast, where they had a specialist unit, and they had this newfangled X-ray thing. They took an X-ray, and they discovered that there was a bullet behind his eyeball that nobody knew was there. As you heard, they figured out what they were going to do about it, and then he wrote an account to his parents of how they resolved the issue.
John Boyd, UVF Hospital, Belfast, 19th of October 1916. My dear mother, just a few lines to let you know how I'm getting on here. I had an operation at 5:45 p.m. yesterday. I was in the operating theatre from 5:45 to 6:15. I'm glad to say I was successful and got a shrapnel growth about 3/8 of an inch diameter from my head slightly above the eyes. I'm very glad to say there was no mark on my face as it was taken from inside the mouth. The doctor used all sorts of instruments up my nose until it was about off my head, as I have no chloroform or gas, but only an injection of morphine in my right arm about 2 hours before I went down. He pushed the probe up my nose, I pushed the ball into my mouth, and his hand was in my mouth and almost up to my eyes to catch the ball and thus prevent it going into the lungs. I may say it was no joke getting it removed, and I never experienced as much pain and agony in half an hour in my life before, and never want to experience it again. I was sitting on a stool. I may say that getting that piece of shrapnel out of my head should do me a lot of good. I don't expect you to believe my story when you see the shrapnel ball. You will say the same as the doctor. You are a living marvel. I don't know how you were not killed. But when I come home in a week or thereabouts, you will find me as healthy as ever, with the exception of a sore throat and forehead. I received your kind letter this morning, and I did not want Father, Blue, or yourself to know about the operation until it was over, as I do not want to cause you any trouble. I am leaving today for Guildford Convalescent Home, and shall draw to a close, hoping this finds you all well at home. Shall try and get to over home before Craig leaves, and shall write to him in a day or two to let him know when I will be home. I am your loving son, John. P.S. Please excuse the writing, as I am very unsteady and my eye gets dazzled from looking long in printing. Do not worry, as I will be alright in a few days.
There was quite a bit of negotiation amongst the boys as to which one of them got to read that letter. There was some sort of fight went on behind the bike sheds, and he ended up victorious. So he got to read it. Apparently, in with that letter was the bullet fragment. But unfortunately, it never made it to the archive, so we don't have it. Quite disappointing. But sitting in the front row there, this gentleman here is Elspeth Graham's son. He was in his late 80s, and he has since died, sadly. And then these ladies here are John and James's nieces. And they travelled up from Southampton to see this. So the school organised for them to go back to the house where the boys had lived. And they hadn't been there since they were children. But we got to speak to a couple of them about their memories. They actually remembered James and John, Uncle James and Uncle John. And it was quite extraordinary to talk to them and for them to say they knew these letters, or they knew the content of these letters, but they'd never heard it read aloud or enacted. We did another version of this in fact, I think it's on here. Actually, no, I'll just go back. We did another version of this project because this was so successful. We got funding to do a project called Theatre of Remembrance, where we took similar records from different parts of Scotland, and with high schools, we produced theatre projects like this. So we produced 4 performances 2 years ago. And what was I going to say? James's daughter came to one of our performances, and the boy who was reading the first of James's letters, they came up with this amazing stage arrangement, because we get the children to do, the young people to do the devising and the staging. And they came up with this staging arrangement. It was a great big hall where they had 4 banks of seating in a poppy shape. And then they performed in the middle and down the avenues. So it was an extraordinary piece of logistics, and the kids worked all this out themselves. Well, James's daughter was sitting in the seat kind of there in this block, and the boy who was reading James's letter came, by coincidence, and stood here and started reading one of James's letters out loud. And she said that she was shivered all over, because she said she'd never heard James's letters read in a broad Glasgow accent, the exact accent that James would have had, because this was the area where he lived. So it was intensely moving for the people who saw it. And it all comes back to archives. It all comes back to why do we keep this stuff? These are the ash pits, if you like, letters and diaries and scraps and newspaper things and receipts and so on. These are the ash pits which become the treasure. In a way that official records, it's harder to get that out. And it comes back to the selection. What do you keep? I was talking to Tom earlier about how do you archive Facebook? How do you archive email? When there's just, you could fill the world with it. But there are no letters, there are no diaries anymore. these young people who did this, we have a lot of those kind of conversations about records and how important they were. Two of the students who did this particular project went on to do history because of this project at university, and one of them went to drama school. And we were proud of that. These are some of the comments that we had back from the students and from the teachers. I love that first comment. The fact that they embodied these people who had written, these people who are dead, who had written this stuff in scratchy pencil on crispy, nasty paper with mud on it. Some of the letters actually had trench mud, which makes me shiver. For them to say that about an archive record, I think is really powerful. As I said, we got funding to do this again in 2018. So this is just some pictures of the other schools with local records again. So we had another school in Eastern Berkshire, we had a school in Edinburgh and a school in Aberdeen, each doing their own records of people who came from the streets around about their school. Nurses, soldiers. Now, the Aberdeen one, which is this one here, this was interesting because we arrived at the school, we left the school to do the selection of students. We arrived at the school and the librarian who was organising it said, it's all girls who have volunteered for this, is that okay? And we looked at each other and we thought, oh right, we've got all of these letters from soldiers, and how do we do this gender thing? So we sat down with these girls and said, how do you want to do this? Let's just read through all the stuff, how do you want to do this? And they said, A, can we have a woman's perspective on this? And B, can we think of imaginative ways to read these soldiers' letters which still respect the content, but which give a woman's perspective on it? And they came up with a really interesting devised piece, which had girlfriends and wives and mothers reading these letters, rather than the people who had written them. And the audience found that very moving. It gave them a whole different perspective on records. The last one I want to tell you about, if this will work, yep, there it is last year I got back from my New Zealand trip, and a friend of mine who is the archivist for the Duke of Argyll, so that's the sort of west part of Scotland, got in touch and said, I'm going over to the island of Tiree, which is this little treeless island out in the Atlantic somewhere, this part of Scotland, with a set of records related to Tiree. We're doing archive workshops, we're doing 2 exhibitions, and then we thought it would be great to do some work with the school. There's a school on Tiree. There's only about 300 people live there, but they've got the school. The smallest secondary school in Scotland, 35 kids. Plus a primary school with, would you believe it, 78 kids. So we've got this school. They were keen to do some stuff with us. So I went and I spent the week doing archive drama sessions using stories from these records. And one of them was the story of a mermaid being found on the beach at Greenold in Tiree. And we know about this because there is a court deposition which is lodged at the High Court in Edinburgh. The story is that some children found the body of a mermaid on the beach in 1803. And they went and got a man who was working in the fields, and they said, we found this mermaid. And he said, and he went down there and he said, well, there's a mermaid here. And he went and got his brother, and they didn't know what to do, and they finally decided to give it a Christian burial, which they did. They buried it. The story went around the island. Well, at that time, there were stories of mermaid sightings going on all over Tiree and all over the Argyll Peninsula. And the local sheriff, who turns out to be the great something grandfather of J.K. Rowling, what are the odds, in 1803, an inspired man, I think, in many ways, he decided this may lead to accusations of witchcraft. This may lead to some mass hysteria kind of a thing, so we need to sort of deal with this. rather than saying, don't be so stupid, he said, everyone who's seen a mermaid, I'm going to hold court depositions, and we are going to listen to your story, and we're going to record it all, and it's all going to get lodged in the High Court in Edinburgh. And he did that, and nothing else was done, but those papers are all still there. On Tyree, it went a step further, because the deposition says the judge on Tyree listened to the story, and he said, that's fascinating. My brother is a doctor. So you are going to take us, and we're going to dig this body up, and we're going to examine it. Which they did, apparently. They went to Greenold, they dug the body up, and the doctor said, yes, this is indeed a mermaid. And that was all recorded and sent off to the High Court in Edinburgh, and then they reburied it. We don't know where it is, but we have this story. And the children, this was them doing, there's the mermaid. See the mermaid up there? I literally had 4 days back in the country. And then I had to throw a whole lot of stuff in the back of the car and drive over to Tyree, which takes a long time, I'll tell you, 7 hours. So the skull, which sits in my study, I threw that in because I thought, you always need a skull. And a whole lot of costumes and so on. And we did all these workshops. Well, these kids here, these ones, who are the primary 7s, the oldest ones, who are about 12, 13, they wanted to, can we do a performance? They said, on Thursday, and we were finishing on Friday. And I thought, we've got 6 hours. Yeah, we can do a performance. So we improvised this performance of this whole story, the children and the worker and the court and the doctor and everything. And they wanted to do it as a promenade. So we did this promenade performance around the local village hall, and about 110 people came to see it. And we got, yeah, there's the document about the mermaid. But that's nice writing.
Great title for a movie.
Yeah. And inspired by that, the local community there has now put in for funding to do a much bigger arts project, which we're hoping we're going to do this summer. So this is the other stuff I'm involved in right now. This is what's coming up this year. Again, through my SCA work. And I apologise, I talked for a whole hour. So I will stop now. Thank you.